Welcome to the second video tutorial on our friction lab analysis. We're going to take the information here and put it into Word along with some descriptions of what we see. First thing, notice the size of my error bars. These are about the right size. If your fluctuation equation is wrong, you'll have bigger error bars. Watch what happens when I take this parentheses and I move it to the end. I have huge error bars. This is not how they should look. You need the parentheses to be around the numerator because right now this is wrong. Currently I'm only dividing the minimum by 2 and I'm subtracting that from the maximum value. Put parentheses instead around the entire numerator. Hit enter to save your work. Copy this down. Sometimes the error bar is so small you can't see it, and that's perfectly fine. First, let's look at these fluctuation values and round these. Okay, I want every value of fluctuation to have 1 or 2 sig figs, but I want to round them to the same decimal place. So let me start removing zeros. Okay, this is bad. The fluctuation is not 0. You really can't have fluctuation of 0. There's always some error in your experiment. So let me add a decimal. I've got 1 sig fig here and 2 for the rest. That is fine. I'll do the same thing here. And I want to match the 2 to the same place, so I'm going to give 2 sig figs for all of these. Okay, I rounded these values to the hundredths place, the second decimal place. So I'm going to take these values of static friction and round them to the same place as the fluctuation. Like that. And look at what happened to my graph. I just fixed my y-axis, so they're not bunches of zeros at the end. Do the same thing here. Oops, that's not to the same place. These are rounded to the hundredths place, and this is rounded to the tenths place. So there we go. I'm going to make sure my equation is visible. Move it somewhere nice. You can see. Now I'm going to open up Word, so you can click the Windows button, type in Word, and then choose what pops up. Choose the blank document right here. And okay, we're off and running. Times New Roman 12. Don't double space, single space is what I would prefer. MLA heading goes here. I'm going to center and say Friction Lab Analysis. And then I'm going to put it back on the left. The following raw data was collected. We're diving right into our tables. We're not going to introduce anything. We're not going to talk about the method. Normally we would have the method. For physics, you really don't need a list of materials. That's not necessary. But we're just going to dive straight into the data. I'm going to snap this over to the left half of the screen, choose this to the right, and choose this for the left. If you have a mouse with a scroller, you can hold Control on your keyboard and scroll down to zoom out. But you can also zoom over here to zoom. Okay, I'm going to put a bunch of extra line spaces. I'm hitting Enter a bunch of times, and that makes it really easy to paste my table and then click right below it to continue typing. Table 1. Always give your tables a title. Table 1, raw data. So the raw data is just the mass values and the friction values. I highlight those, and then on my keyboard, with my mouse, I click and drag to highlight. On my keyboard, I hold Control and I push C, and that copies. I go in here, I click below. With my mouse, I hold Control on my keyboard and I push the V key. V makes it paste. And look at this, there's a little paste options box that pops up. So hover over with your mouse, click, and there's a bunch of options. The one that usually works best is Use Destination Styles, because it turns it into Times New Roman just like we want. So I'm going to go right between this column and this column. I'm going to make sure you don't want to highlight a cell when you do this. Make sure you don't have anything highlighted. I'm going to go right between the two columns, get that double arrow icon and move this over. But now it messed this up. So let me undo. And then I'm just going to actually, here's a trick. You go right between and you double click. Double click. There it goes. And it automatically fits this column to be as wide as the text. I'm going to highlight everything and recenter right here. And then click below. The following, maybe I could say the same thing. The following data was processed. That's kind of awkward, so maybe I'll say, I calculated the data shown below. Table 2, processed data. Excuse me. So then I'm going to highlight the processed data. I click with my mouse, click and drag with my mouse. I hold Control on my keyboard, and then on my keyboard, while holding Control, I push the C button. Then I click under here. Do I have extra lines? Yes, I do. On my keyboard, I hold Control and I push V for paste. And whoops, I started typing. Where'd the paste options go? If you start typing, you have to just erase the whole table, so you can undo to make that happen. And then Control V again. Just repaste it. Choose destination styles. Now, I need to fix these. If I double click though, click. I double click. Okay, there's not going to be room if I make everything so wide. It's going to run off the page. So what I'm going to do instead, you have to start from the right side. You can't start from the left side or you'll kind of get into trouble. I'm going to start from the right side and just manually expand this out. Then I'm going to expand this one to a good... I'm going to make this... Okay, I want this to be on 2 lines, so it's on 2 lines. Then I'm going to put this one back so it's on 2 lines. And then this one goes to 2 lines. It's not a very glorious process. This goes to 2 lines, and okay, I can put this one on 2 lines. But now the whole graph is moved over. So if you hover over the graph, you see in the corner there's this little box that appears. You hover over the graph and there's this little box. I'm going to click that box. Whoops, it went away. Click that box and drag with my mouse. I click with my mouse, I drag over, and I let go. Okay. Now, we have these values. Oh, let me highlight everything and center. If you want to center the table itself, you click this box and you hit center. But we don't need to really do that. It's fine to just leave it like this. We have values that we calculated, and we have to explain where they came from. So now you have to give a sample calculation for this normal force, and that sample calculation will represent how they all were calculated. You're going to say, okay, where'd this 1.95 come from? And that will represent the calculation for the entire column. You'll explain how did you get this value. That'll serve as a calculation for the whole column. And these we don't have to do because it's the same as these. Okay, let's explain how the normal force came about. I calculated the normal force. The normal forces, there's many, from the masses. First converting from grams to kilograms. That seems fine. You do not need to explain that you took the mass and you multiplied by 9.81. Don't explain that with words because the calculation is going to tell us exactly that. So don't say it twice, let the calculation do the talking. I could say Fn equals mg equals, but there's a really, really fancy way to format our equations. You go into the Insert tab, and on the far right, you choose Equation. Inside this is the equation builder. You can type inside the equation builder, but you can also exit the equation and type outside. When you type outside the equation builder, it reformats the equation. But if you take away this extra text, it puts it right in the middle, and you get some nice fancy formatting. Okay. So let's say Fn. Well, I want the n to be subscript, right? But if you try to highlight and do the subscript, it's not going to work. Those buttons are not available. Instead, if you click on far right, the design tab on the far right, there are all these options. You can add fractions, you can add superscripts, you can add subscripts and superscripts, right? V final squared, squared. You can click to these boxes to get inside. You can make fractions, 2/5. You can type and have symbols come up. Theta, hit space. You can do sigma and then hit space. So there's a lot of cool options with this equation builder. You can do subscripts using the script button and then choose the one with the subscript, F, N, or you can do F on your keyboard, hold shift and push the underscore next to the plus, and then do N, and to initiate the formatting you hit spacebar. Then I'm going to highlight the N and de-italicize the subscripts. So you can go to home and de-italicize, or on your keyboard you hold control and you push I. Equals, whoops, let me hit the right arrow to get out of the subscript. Now I type M times G. I can type in parentheses. I'm going to type parentheses, open, close, and then watch this, I'll hit space. Wow, and now I've got a parentheses I can go into. Open, close, space. G, I know, that's 9.81 meters per second squared. And so I did for squared, I hit shift 6, that's the caret, and then the 2, and I hit spacebar to initiate the formatting. Okay, and then I'm going to highlight units. Units do not get italicized, so control on my keyboard, I hold control and I push I. Over here, I need to choose my first mass, 230 grams. Control I to de-italicize, grams. Then under design, I had to multiply this. Where's the multiply? Here it is, times. But you can also get there by doing / times, and then you hit space. And how do I know that? If I hover over, look at this, multiplication sign, it gives me the keyboard shortcut. And then you hit space to initiate the formatting. And then I'm going to put a fraction bar, space. Wow, that's cool. But you can also insert a fraction using fraction. So my fraction, I want, let's see, I added kilo to the numerator, and in the denominator was 10 to the 3. So again, I did 10 caret 3, space, but you can also use the script, superscript. And what was this? I got a value of 2.256 newtons. Always put units inside the equation. When you're doing sample calculations, you need them in the equation itself and also at the final answer. Then I hit enter. Now look at this. If I type text not in the equation builder, it reformats my fractions. I don't want that. So let me make sure there's no other text. Only the equation is on this line. That makes it centered and nicely formatted. Then I have to explain how I calculated the averages. So for the static friction and kinetic friction values, I averaged the 3 trials together. And then I insert equation. So I'm going to say Fs max equals. So Fs max, this is the variable I'm using for the average. I could put another subscript, average, but I don't want to do that. That's just too many subscripts. So I'm just going to tell myself, okay, this stands for the average. So I do insert fraction, design at the far right, fraction, and I do trial 1 plus trial 2, trial 3, and then down below I divide by 3. Okay, now I'm going to put the fraction symbol, which is where the question mark is, and hit space. And I'm going to enter the 3 trials. Let's see. Here they are, 1.85, 2.21, 1.775. So I'm sticking with this first trial as sort of my sample. So let me write those in. Type equals, and I write down what the average was.